What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another live oil painting session. Today we are going to continue this autumn landscape painting or fall landscape painting. However you want to think about it, trees are falling, or leaves are falling from the trees, and they've got some nice colors to them. And so what I'm looking at now is a painting that is touch dry. As you can see, I can kind of move my hand across it. It is not fully dry in some areas. Like let's find something here that's not fully, yeah, here. So the yellow is not completely dry. It's a little bit in between dry. But mind you, this is about 2 days. So we started this on Monday. Then it was Tuesday, and now today is Wednesday. So pretty good. The drying time is pretty good with these paints. So remember, these are Cobra talons, and let's just go ahead and continue where we left off. So we were working on the trees last, and I was going in with some of the different shapes of the branches, individual little details, and I'm gonna just pretty much pick up where I left off. So I'm gonna add the tiniest bit of water to the paint, and I don't really clean the palette. I just kind of put it in the freezer. And I was teaching a portrait lesson this morning on Patreon. So these are the colors these are just portrait colors that were left on the palette here. So let's just get a nice kind of grayish orangey brown, and we'll go ahead and continue painting the details for the trees. And I just thin it out with water. I don't really need anything else, as these are Cobra talons. Water mixable. I'm using a Silverbrush. This is a size 6 pure red table, cat's tongue, Silverbrush. So definitely feel free to ask any painting related questions, or just stop by and say hello. I don't mind. I like to use a cat's tongue shape mainly for portraiture. It has the control of a filbert when you press down on the brush, but when you don't press down on the brush, it's kind of like the specificity of a round. Although I will admit I pressed down too hard there, which made that stem a little thick. But it doesn't matter. I can go into it with the color of the leaves and erase it. Not a big deal. As things get further away, they get darker. So I'm going to leave that stuff light back there. So that's pretty good for some extra little twigs and stuff, extra branches and trees. I'm mixing a kind of somewhat dark orangey yellow. Pretty much just utilizing the mixtures that was already on my palette there. So a question I will ask anyone watching the stream right now. Question will be, is anyone out there? As you can see, my chat has been rather quiet. Is anybody out there? Just a nice little Wednesday. And trees have light and shadow. So that's essentially what I'm adding now, is the shadow. It's not as clear as a portrait. Portrait's pretty obvious where shadows are going to go mostly. Hey Jonas. Welcome, welcome. So adding some more info here. Hey Jeanette. Oh good, I'm glad you like the landscape, Jonas. Adding a little more green. So today we add more details to this landscape. Yet still, even at the detail stage of a landscape, you want to be sitting as far back as you can and really conceptualizing the forms. Don't just put just little dabs of color wherever you want. I'm following a specific pattern for the shadow. Hey Jonas, yep, that's Hugo. That's Hugo in there. I don't know if I'm gonna paint his leash. I might leave him without a leash, let him be free. Not that that would be a good idea in real life. He would just take off. No questions asked. Full freedom. So I'm leaving this kind of vicinity to be light this to be middle tone, this to be shadow. Obviously each tree has individual shapes of light and shadow, but I'm grouping them together rather than differentiating individual trees right away. I can come into individual trees and differentiate it. Hey Angela, great to have you here. Your self-portrait is looking fantastic. Really great. So for example, let's deem this my shadow brush. Let's get another brush to be my light brush. This will be my light brush, light orangey yellow. Painting in some light planes. Pick a little section, let this be my section here. Shadow, light. This is one individual form now. You have to think about these trees that way. Even though they are very abstract, I know. I haven't gone in with all those nice little individual leaves, and everyone has kind of deemed this an impressionist landscape, which I don't argue with. I don't think that's what I was going to call the finish of it, but it's the start. I kind of start almost everything somewhat in series of shapes. Impressionism, by definition, now I know most of you already know this, but definition of Impressionism is painting the light, not just about the aesthetic. You can have an Impressionist painting that's quite realistic. It's about the light, and you can have a really not realistic kind of brushy looking thing like this. That's not an Impressionist painting. It's all about describing the light. And in here, I've exaggerated the light. So I've pushed it a little bit farther than it is in real life. And I'm still going to push it. There's going to be little pockets of light there they're going to be even lighter than they already are. And we should probably do that now because I want to have something to compare. But of course I'll wait. I have these shadows, and yet there still needs to be some little highlights there. So I'll clean off the brush with a little bit of water. I should get a different brush for this, but I'll just clean it off. As you can see, pretty easy to clean that brush. So this will be a yellow orangey following the planes. That's right, the more you paint, the more you're used to color, the worse your grammar becomes. I'm leaving some shadow shapes there. Now this becomes its own little thing. This becomes a tree with its own light and shadow, separating from that generic bunch that I had there. Now I'll get a different brush. White, and let's mix somewhere over here. Blue, kill it off with some of this Pretty much like I would mix the white of the eye, the sclera, on a portrait. Now I don't want it to be that blue. Add a little bit of green, yellow, which makes it green anyway. Now I'm only punching up the light in some areas. I want that layer that I started with to still sit there, and I'll actually use this to my advantage to add individual little pockets of light. Bring up the light a little bit more. Still somewhat grayish, but I am punching the light a little more. And of course, I will add more contrast now to pretty much everything. And we'll start off with this little area here. Contrast is key at this point. Adding in kind of a greenish plane next to it. Mixing onto the canvas a little bit. Now here's where it gets challenging. I'm gonna get this dry layer to be part of this plane. So I'm kind of dragging the paint up, the wet into dry. And we're going to exaggerate this. Same idea, dragging the wet paint right above to the dry paint, letting this be a plane on its own. Oh, thanks, Angela. Hugo's just kind of hanging out there. He's gonna get more details, of course. I guess I'll paint his backpack in there. Kind of don't want to, but whenever he's out there, he always has his little backpack. It's like a little explorer. Hey, people, no worries. Thanks for joining. Thanks everyone that's been writing comments, keeping this stream alive. Now, one thing my teacher Paulden always told me that I kind of didn't listen to for a long period of time until I realized how important it is when something looks vague, let it be vague. And I think he was speaking mainly with portraiture, but if something looks obscure, paint it obscure the way it is. Don't try to force something onto it. And landscape, yeah, you do have to force some things like that, like punching some planes in and pushing the contrast. But in areas like that where there's a bunch of different things, as long as I have a light plane up here, a shadow, an accent here, and then a floor plane here, I really can't push more into that. It kind of is what it is. I don't want to push any more into it. Now let's start to add some more. While we have this dark paint, let's make it kind of like a dark brown. Some more texture now, and I can pretty much just let the brush do its own thing. Just kind of sprinkle these dark shapes all over the place. And we're going to use this for the base of some of the leaves that are going to fit on here. And I got to do this carefully, even though I'm adding all these brush strokes everywhere. I got to be somewhat deliberate with where every leaf is going to fit and how the leaves are going to look. Now obviously in the front here there's going to be more texture, the leaves are going to look bigger, and something like say that I can have more of a defined plane and let these kind of be a little less delineated. See, I gotta be careful though, this can be overdone really easily, and I've overdone things like this so many times in landscapes in the past, especially when there's leaves on the floor. At first it feels nice and it's like, wow, this is starting to get really realistic, and then we realize, oh crap, like this all of a sudden 30-40 feet away tends to have the same amount of detail as things 4 feet away, 3 feet away. So start with that first and then paint all that stuff in the distance, the detail in it later. And here we can get kind of silly with this. I've got 2 brushes. I could literally do this. Two brushes. Right? Like I don't have to be that specific about it. Hey, home studio. Oh, thank you. Glad that your wife enjoys the videos. Thanks for watching from Bulgaria. Thank you for that comment. That's actually one of the nicest things I've heard probably in a long time. So thank you. Make me feel a lot better I'm human, everyone. Not every day is a great day for me, so thank you for that comment. Makes me feel a lot better. Thank you. Now these leaves have specific shapes to them, right? You can zoom into them and see specific shapes. But still, I'm not at the stage where I want to add such specificity to every single shape. Try to hold back as much as possible. It's very tempting to go in and delineate the little planes on the leaves, light and shadow on the leaves. But hold back as much as you can. Stay as far back as you can. Some of the best landscape paintings in the world, they have very little detail when you look up close. And not just impressionist landscapes either. Like you can look at oh man, I forgot his name. I think it's, now I'm gonna sound silly. Let me look this up before I mention it to you. Oh, the glory of Googling everything. Constable. Yeah, that's his name. Common question people ask, what is Constable known for? Constable is famous for his landscapes, which are mostly of the Suffolk countryside where he was born and lived. He made many open-air sketches using these as a basis for his large exhibition paintings, which were worked up in the studio. Constable, 1776, lived until 1837. There you go. And his landscape paintings, you can look up close, zoom into them, and you'd be surprised. You would think that the Impressionists invented that kind of stuff, but they really didn't. They just kind of made it popular. And it's all about shapes of color in relation to other shapes of color. Different in some regards to portraiture, which is more about drawing. It's about shapes of color, yes, but it's more about drawing. This is not so much about drawing. This is more about effect, shapes of color, what kind of effect you get from it. Now, gotta be careful now. You don't want any light to be close to just straight up white. So for example, always do this as a test and make sure that this light, straight up titanium white, nothing on this canvas, not even the doggy's tail there, gets that bright, even though on the reference it does look that bright. You've got to resist the tendency to add straight white anywhere on the painting. And if any of you are working on a painting right now and there's still some white left within the areas that you're adding color, knock down the white as quickly as possible. That's one of the fastest ways to improve your handling of your values. Get rid of the white of the canvas, because it can make it difficult to judge your values. So I got to be careful with that. And this is pretty close to the sky, but because of the transparency of the paint, I can be fairly confident in that the layer of the canvas underneath is going to make sure that that doesn't look so so light, because you're seeing some of the canvas underneath. So a question I'm gonna ask everyone. This is gonna be pertaining to not so much the painting, but about this seasonal painting thing. What is your favorite time of year of the year? What's your favorite time of the year? Now, my favorite time of the year used to be fall, um, but it's not anymore. I think my favorite time of the year is in between spring and summer, right before it gets really hot. And you might live in a place where it doesn't really get that hot. So, I mean, there's so many different ways to answer. What's your favorite time of the year? Not so much season, but your favorite time of the year. And if your favorite time of the year is, say, the fall, or the winter, or the summer, if you mean dead fall, winter, or summer, that's fine too. I'm curious. So I used to really like the fall, like right in the middle of the fall. But I don't like how cold it gets these days. And it's always actually been cold. I just didn't realize how much I like the summer. When it's not dead freezing in the morning here. Now these little details are going to be smaller. So these brush strokes are more with the tip of the brush instead of the back end of the brush. Kind of like waves in a seascape. That red is too red. It's amazing what you can get with a 3-color palette. Well, I can tell you what's not everyone's favorite time of the year. Starts with a T. Ooh. when taxes are due. That's not your favorite time. Angela, usually like springtime. It's hot and cool and there are flowers. Yeah, sounds like idyllic. Yeah, I'm with you there. Alright, so let's add some details to the Shiba Inu. I don't really see his front left legs there, so I'm going to invent it. Just a little glimpse of where it would be. Now here's where you gotta be very cautious with your painting from a photo reference. Try the best that you can not to completely mimic the photo reference. Always correct it whenever you can. Now note it's not completely white like that. But he does have a furry tail. So I guess another question I'll ask everyone, not so much related to painting, but does anyone here have any pets? Anyone here have a cat, a dog, a Shiba Inu, which is somewhat in between a cat and a dog, goldfish, ball pythons, tarantulas? I ask this because you will eventually end up painting your pets into your paintings, not just paintings of your pets, but you will eventually add them into your own studio paintings. It's gonna happen. It's inevitable. And if it doesn't happen, what are you doing? It needs to be part of your painting life. All right, let's give him his little backpack. I'm sure someone here has a cat. Hey, Janet. Well, cool. You have a parakeet named Tweety. Neat. I grew up with parakeets. They can be some of the nicest birds when you raise them. I remember my mom had two parakeets that actually hatched in the house where I grew up, and they were such nice birds. But pretty much every parakeet before them kind of didn't really stay with us. They kind of would, if you let them out the cage, they would just kind of try to fly away. But these actually stayed with you. I like parakeets. They're not as loud. My mother-in-law has a African ringneck parakeet, which is kind of more like a parrot. I don't know why they call it a parakeet, but that bird is so loud, and they're supposed to be. They're supposed to talk. This bird doesn't talk. It just yells out really loud whenever the door opens or closes. It's kind of funny. You can hear the bird from probably, I don't know, like 20 yards away from the townhouse where they live. It's that loud. Which is why I like parakeets. Just regular parakeets. They're called buggies, I think. The nickname. I like those birds a lot more. And I had a friend that had an African gray growing up. So smart. Abraham was his name. Could speak in like almost like in sentences. I guess we should add his leash in there. Just make it realistic. I don't like looking at him without his safety leash. I don't think anyone's gonna mind. Thinning out the paint a little bit. Yep, there goes his leash. Let's see, so from that, Tweety imitates the whistling and he's not very loud. Rescued him from a family that no longer wanted him. Well, that's good that you rescued him. Imitates the whistling, cool. Yeah, I like that those birds aren't very loud. That's what I remember about them. Very very nice birds. So we got more detail in this landscape now. It happened a little faster than I thought. And I don't want to put too much noise, I guess, around Hugo. You really can't see him in the reference. In the reference, all you see is his tail. Which I guess it's the same in the painting when you look at it, but it could be worse. At least you can see some of the side of his head. What I will do is ask everyone here, we've got about 18 of us, if you want me to add something to it. Now that we're getting to this stage of the painting, I guess there really isn't much else. Thanks, Janet. There really isn't much else that I foresee needing that much attention. Now, I could go in individual trees and delineate all those branches and stuff, and I could do that. I don't know if I want to, but it's possible. However, here's where I can go in. One time I added a Loch Ness Monster. I can add whatever you want. You want me to add SpongeBob SquarePants? You want me to add an alien, a UFO, something in there. A snowman. What would a snowman be doing in the fall? Kind of thing. Anything you want. Take your time. Anything you want me to add? A turtle, a cobra, a ferret, a tarantula, whatever you want me to add. In the meantime, I'm gonna go get Hugo. Alright, so I'm gonna bring Hugo in here with his little backpack. I just woke him up, so he seems kind of half asleep. A pair of angelic Somebody calling me. Oh, that's funny. No, I don't think I can add that in there. It's gotta be relatable with YouTube. So there's Hugo in his little backpack. He's saying, I don't know if that can be added to the painting. Not so much for YouTube. Yeah, he's half asleep. Like, why'd you wake me up? I was sleeping, dreaming about bones, walking around in a field of leaves. Should we have Hugo do some painting for us? There, he's adding a little bit of a leaf in there. That's Hugo's contribution. Thanks, Janet. It's like, why'd you wake me up? Why'd you wake me up? I was sleeping. I just wanted to sleep. He's falling asleep as you look at him. This guy. His head's still wet from getting a shower. That's why it looks like that. Every time Hugo is taking a bath, he's not like this. Not like this. Alright, so let's just add a few more leaves. Like I said, I can go in and add light and shadow for a specific leaf. If I want to. But I can see that everyone's not as interested in the landscape. So definitely next time we'll start up another portrait. We can paint some angelic leaves. That's certainly possible. What I will probably do, something I've done many times before, is I will totally ruin the painting and add Bending Rodriguez. I haven't added him to many paintings in the past, and I doubt I'll get any problems for adding that. Let's see, where am I going to add him? Following this little trajectory here, we could add the robots. Where are we going to add the robots? For anyone that doesn't know, Bending Rodriguez comes from Futurama. So let's say the robot will be over here. Yeah, robot will be right somewhere over here. So his legs will be over here. It's going to look like a stick figure. And what is he going to do? He's just going to be waving. That's what he's going to be doing. being a little robot. Bender Bending Rodriguez. Now, of course, his legs are more like a spring. Now, I think most of you don't know who Bender is. So, for those of you that do know who Bender is, you know that he is one of the most iconic cartoon characters from the early 2000s. He's made of metal, as he is a robot. And he is pretty much a cylinder. His torso is a cylinder. His head is bigger than that, but he'll be a little cylinder. I'm doing this to prove a point that you can really relax. As Bob Ross would say, it's your world. Of course, Bender's got an antenna on his head. His head is actually a lot bigger than this. Now we're gonna go ahead and paint his eyes. He's got this little yellow cartoon character eyes. Now, obviously, they're not supposed to be that light. I usually, so Bender comes from Futurama. If you've never heard of it, look up Futurama. Again, one of the best cartoons in the early 2000s. It's more of like a grown-up cartoon. Bender is an iconic character in there, and I've incorporated him in many paintings, many studio paintings. In the past, so this doesn't come out of nowhere. If anyone has seen my Instagram or my paintings in the past, I've even put Bender in a Vermeer. The Milkmaid. Yeah, I put Bender in there. And because he is made out of metal, it's going to be more reflective on the top plane. Which makes him look a little uncharacteristic. His hands, he'll just be waving there. should be light coming from back here. And so just like that, we've added a robot into the painting. Obviously he's gonna have a shadow. It's got a little door. Bender always has a door there. His legs are actually really skinny. His legs don't look like that. Hey, Diamond Grip, thank you. I do know that probably 85% of you won't agree with this robot that I've painted in here, but I grew up in the 90s. Futurama was kind of a thing. He says, "Bite my shiny metal painting." That's what he says. So Janet, you wrote, "Do you paint portraits for people?" Oh, you mean like a commission? Yeah, I do, but I haven't, like these days, I've been extremely busy with my online classes. But if you want to contact me, maybe in the winter time, I might have more time, but currently I've been really trying to devote a lot of time into my consistency with like these streams and such, so it'd be a little difficult for me. But if you want to talk to me on Patreon, it might be easier to talk with you about it on Zoom on one of the classes. So it's definitely not a no. It's just right now I've got a lot of stuff that I'm doing, and it would be great to talk to you on Patreon. Just feel free to contact me on there. I believe now the way it's set up, you can just log on to the app and message me. So I don't even think you have to pay for it to message me. So that should be an easier way to do it. Okay, so we've got a robot. We have got Bender, Bending Rodriguez. And now it makes sense because Hugo was staring, he was staring at something, right? And we had to figure out what it was. Yep, no problem, Janet. No problem. So we had to figure out what he was staring at. So now Hugo was clearly staring at Bender, Bending Rodriguez. And it only makes sense. I actually almost named him Bender. So it makes sense. Doesn't it, Hugo? It makes sense that Bender would have ended up in the painting. He's like, "Can you stop picking me up? I just want to go to sleep. I'm still wet from the bath. You should dry me." Yep, that's what I'm gonna do. Yep, that's what I'm gonna do. So this will be the point where I'll ask if there are any last minute questions. It's been about an hour now. It's pretty good for this painting. I don't foresee putting more detail than this. We individualize some of these leaves. Let these be a little less detailed, more branches, light and shadow, pretty much as far as it needs to go. Yeah, I made him small, Bender. I could have made him bigger, but he is in the distance, so this is probably maybe like 15 feet or so. Um, Hugo looks massive compared to him, but it's a small Bender. It's a small Bender. I needed it to fit in this section of the painting. So any last minute questions? I believe this is the first time I've painted Bender in one of my live streams. I usually paint him from imagination now because I've painted him so many times. Looking at pictures of him. Okay, no problem, no problem. Alright, so it looks like we don't have any last minute questions. So remember everyone, the schedule is Mondays and Wednesdays, 6:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The next time we return, next time we return we will start another one. Potentially a portrait, but we'll see what we do. Again, if you're interested in taking your online art education with me further, please consider checking out my online classes starting at $5 a month on my Patreon. Links are in the description box of this video. Once again, I wish you all the very best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next one.